In this video, I'm going to share with you one of the assessments that I use most often when coaching executives and leaders. When I coach leaders and executives, I often use assessments as part of the coaching process. These are usually at the beginning of the engagement where we're seeking to gain a greater awareness and insight into the client's behavioral style and leadership traits. One of my favorite assessments that helps to accelerate this insight is the PXT Select. My clients like it and I like it for a variety of reasons, which I'll explain as we go through the assessment. There are multiple reports that are available by the client taking the assessment once, which usually takes 30 to 45 minutes. It's a fairly comprehensive assessment, as you'll see. So this report is called the Individual's Graph. Page 2 has an introduction to the report. The data falls into 3 sections. The thinking style section, which has a composite score, which gives an indication of how quickly the coachee can learn and apply new information. And then there's a math section and a verbal section. It tests their math skills, their math reasoning ability, as well as their verbal skills and verbal reasoning ability. Next section is behavioral traits. There are multiple measurements of different behaviors that often come into play when leading. And then the final section is career interests, the type of work that they like to do. Do they like to serve others? Do they like to do financial admin work, mechanical work, etc.? This can also be interesting. So now let's take a look at the graph itself. So the thinking style section has the coachee listed usually by initials. This is a sample report, and so it just says you. But it would normally be the initials of the person who took the assessment, the composite score being the top line, and the score of 8 tells you that this person can learn quickly and apply new information quickly. That's usually important to leadership, especially if you're coaching someone who's preparing to enter into a new role. There will be lots of new information that they will need to learn and apply in that new role, and therefore this score of 8 would probably serve them well. You can see this person also has high verbal skill, reasonably strong verbal reasoning, and also high numerical ability and numeric reasoning. Depending on the type of position they're entering into, these high scores could also serve them well. One thing to be careful about when coaching leaders who have high scores in this thinking style section is to ensure that they're flexible and able to work with a variety of different people at different levels who may not have the same strong scores that they have. Are they able to reason out problems with people with lower scores? Are they able to have good, constructive, positive conversations with people who may not be able to think as quickly as they do, learn as quickly as they do? That's really important when working with someone who has high scores. Are they flexible and adaptive to work well with people of varying scores? The next section is the behavioral traits, and I mentioned to you this is a section ripe for conversation. We have multiple traits here, and I'll explain a few of them. Some are pretty self-explanatory. Pace is an area where you have a sense of urgency about your work. You can see that it's steady on one side and urgent on the other. If you have a high score here, it means that you work with a sense of urgency. You have that do-it-now mentality, and that's great when you're in leadership. Where this can be something interesting to talk about is when they lead a team with varied pace scores. Imagine that there are some people on the team that might have a pace of 2 and others that might have a pace of 7 and 8 and 9. Can that team work well together with different pace scores, and can the leader, again, flex to meet the needs of individuals without being too demanding of people that have a lower pace score? Typically, those people, what they like to do is do one thing at a time, do it thoroughly, and then move on to the next item. That's not necessarily right or wrong, but it's a different working style than someone who might like to multitask and work simultaneously across multiple tasks and projects and move everything along very quickly and not worry too much about specific details because they may figure that someone else will catch them, they'll catch them in the next round, etc. Different style of working, right? You can see assertiveness here, sociability, leaders usually aren't super sociable, but they're also not super reserved. They tend to fall somewhere along the middle. Conformity, leaders tend to be strong-willed. Outlook, leaders tend to be around the middle again there, somewhat trusting but also somewhat skeptical. Decisiveness is a good one that I usually spend a lot of time talking to leaders about. Leaders tend to be bold when it comes to making decisions, and so you tend to see them more on the right side of the graph here. Deliberate means that they like to take their time, gather more information, perhaps talk to others. And of course, these are all good traits. But when it comes time to make the decision, if all the information isn't there, can the leader make a bold decision that may entail risk? Because usually at the highest levels, the decisions entail risk, and usually with risk comes great reward. So it's oftentimes necessary for leaders to be bold. And if your leader has a lower score here, it's something to talk about. Could being bolder affect their leadership style in a positive way? And then we have a few more here: accommodation, independence. You tend to see leaders being autonomous. If people are preparing for advancement and they tend to be quite reliant, that's an area to coach around. That could they start to become more independent and autonomous, because that will be necessary as they move up. And then judgment, are they factual or intuitive? You'll often find that leaders land on both sides. I haven't seen that they're always factual or they're always intuitive. One thing you should understand about this graph is, depending on where their score is, they can usually flex and move to the right or left 1 to 2 scores. If they need to move further than that to accommodate their team, their management, the demands of the project that they might be working on, it could become difficult over time to sustain a level that's quite different from where they land on this graph. And it is something of a bell curve. Most people fall within that middle range, with very few people falling on the ends of the ranges. It can be as little as 2.5% who might be at a score of 1 or a score of 10 on any of these traits. The interests, as I mentioned before, they will be rank ordered based on the responses that the leader makes to the questions asked. And you'll see that they'll come into this lineup, as you can observe here, that this leader in this sample report prefers technical, creative, and then tied for third is financial admin and enterprising. Leaders tend to be enterprising. They tend to have some level of people service, and do prefer financial admin, because there is a lot of financial work that's required at leadership levels, especially when P&L responsibility is involved. And that admin may fall in terms of ensuring that leaders below them are being equipped for advancement. They have the right structure to support their long-term ambitious goals for growth of the organization. So this is one report which I like to use. The report that you can create out of this one is called the leadership report. Let's take a look at that. So this is the leadership report, and it's focused specifically on leadership competencies. So it starts out with the same graph that we just took a look at. And here you can see the person's initials, as I mentioned to you. This is our sample, Oliver Chase. So now we're looking at the 6 different leadership competencies that will be presented in this report. And you can see that they are listed here in the large circles. And then what's next to them is where the information was gleaned from in the report to create the information related to their strengths or challenges in these 6 different areas. So we'll just take a look at one as an example, and you can know that the rest are following in line with the first sample. So creating a vision. This is an area where leaders definitely have to have some strength. And we start by defining what we mean by it so we can be on the same page here. We represent the information that was drawn from the report. So creating a vision is based on decisiveness, judgment, and a creative interest. What might Oliver look like as a leader when creating a vision? So you have a paragraph that describes that here. Oliver tends to consider a variety of different options before making a decision, and probably prefers to consult with others in many cases. So then we would talk with the leader about that, right? Does this describe you? All reports should be personalized to the person that you're coaching. All of the information will never be entirely accurate. So I like to go through the information with the coachee and have them tell me what's true and what's not true. On the next page, you see potential strengths and challenges. And I ask once again for the leader to personalize the information. What's true, what's not true, and what do you need to spend more time thinking about? Because oftentimes they don't know all of the answers right up front as to what's true and what's not true. They may have to spend time in contemplation, and therefore we may come back to this report in a second coaching session. It's a lot of information to unpack in a single coaching session. You see here it says questions to ask Oliver. This report could be used behind the scenes in that you as the coach could examine the report, consider the information within, and then decide to talk about certain aspects of it with your client. Or, as I like to do, I like to just present the report to the client in the coaching session. I never send the report to the client before the coaching session, but during the coaching session, we look at the report together and reflect upon the information that's presented. And I've always had a good experience. Leaders really like this report. They usually get a lot of good information from it and may take some actions based on it, depending on how they feel this applies to current challenges that they're facing and their goals for improving their leadership effectiveness. So that's the first one, and then it just goes on through each one of the 6 after that. As you can see, it's 17 pages, which makes for a very robust report, and they will often refer back to this information during the coaching engagement, and you might too. So this is one of the favorite assessments that I like to use in my coaching engagements. I hope that you might consider using this assessment. If you'd like to see a sample report, feel free to email me at michael@bayarea.executivecoach.com, and I'd be happy to send it to you. If you'd like to consider actually using this assessment in your coaching, also email me and we can talk about how you might go about doing that, either under my account as an authorized distributor of this assessment, or how you might go about becoming an authorized distributor yourself. If you are an internal leader who would like to use this assessment internally, there is a certification program that you can take and get certified to use this assessment, and then I would set you up with an account. Again, email me at michael@bayarea.executivecoach.com if you'd like to learn more. To learn about my coaching and training certification programs, visit my dedicated website, bayareaexecutivecoachtraining.com. If you have any comments, please post them here. I'll reply to all of them. And if you enjoyed this video and gained from it, look for more assessments coming your way soon in future videos, and please subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much.